Welcome. Each week I like to go through the data that's been published on the COVID-19 pandemic and put together a video that summarizes what the data is telling us. This video covers the week ending the 6th of July 2020. I've subtitled this particular video Learn to Live With It, which is the motto that seems to be coming out of the White House at the moment. I take great exception to something like this where public health is concerned, especially where so many people have lost their lives. So let's take a look and see what the data is telling us, and it's not a good story. Here are the main points to take away from this particular presentation. We're setting new records on the number of cases every day in various parts of the world. As a result, some countries, states and cities are reimposing restrictions that they removed earlier. According to an article in The Lancet, herd immunity may not be achievable. And the EU is now opening up to tourists, except for certain countries like the US, where the pandemic is particularly bad. Many of you have seen this curve before. It shows the total number of cases as a function of time. That's the red line. Now, if you go back to March and April, there was a fairly constant rate at which these cases were increasing. That's shown by this dotted line here. Back then, the goal was to turn this curve over so it bends to the right. But you see, we've been unsuccessful in that. In fact, it's bending the other way, which means the number of cases is accelerating. And if you carry on that trend further, the divergence gets larger and larger with time. Overall in the world, we've had 11.8 million cases and over 500,000 deaths. In the US, which has just 4% of the world's population, we've had 3.1 million cases, or about 25% of the number of cases, and 133,000 deaths, or about 24% of the deaths. So the US is very much an average country as far as the death rate is concerned, despite what the White House might be telling us at the moment. Let's take a look at this claim that the US death rate is one of the lowest in the world. You can see that the US is up here on the top right of this curve in a little orange dot. Now, these diagonal dotted lines are death rates of a particular value. So the dotted line here represents the US death rate. Now, if you're above that line, then your death rate is higher, and if you're below that line, the death rate is lower. And as you can see, there are many countries with a much lower death rate than the United States, and only a relatively few number of countries with equivalent or higher death rates than the United States. So that claim about the death rate being lower in the United States than anywhere else is pure nonsense. We could ask what has gone wrong in the United States, and I think it's fairly clear from these two graphs. On the left, we have the total number of cases as a function of time, comparing the United States with Europe. And on the right, we have the rates per million people for the United States, Europe, Canada, and Japan. Looking first at the left, the blue curve, Europe curve, peaked at a similar number to that of the United States, even though the total population of Europe is actually larger than that of the United States. However, after about 4 to 6 weeks, they managed to get their rates down to very low levels. And then they opened up very cautiously, and the numbers have not gone up. The United States, on the other hand, the peak lasted a much longer. And when it did start to come down, it didn't come down very much. The states then started to open up rapidly, and now you've seen a surge in new cases. You look on the right, you have rates. And the story is very similar, but now we have Canada and Japan to compare, and their story is similar to that of Europe. They got the rates down very low very quickly, and they've stayed down, whereas the United States, because it started opening up quickly, the rates have soared again. Let's take a look at the performance of the 10 countries with the highest number of COVID-19 cases over the last week. Topping that list is the US with over 3 million cases. That's an increase of 337,000 over the previous week. That's an 11% increase. Second is Brazil with 257,000 increase. That's a 16% increase. We also have India and Mexico with large percentage increases. Peru and Chile have been shooting up the table very quickly and represent with Brazil a new hotspot in the world of South America. Two countries have been seemingly doing pretty well. That's the UK at 2% increase and Spain at a 1% increase. As those two countries are opening up at the current time, that may not be sustainable as far as they are concerned. Let's see where the hotspots are in the United States, and it's pretty much as it was before, all along the southern states and up the eastern seaboard. Now, this says to me that the hope that when the hot weather comes, this will just disappear is a futile hope, and because these are all the hottest states in the Union, and they seem to be having the worst time of all. Here's the number of cases as a function of time. You can see if you go back to March and April, there was a fairly constant rate of increase of this, and we'd hoped to turn the curve over to the right, and in fact that happened as New York and California seemed to get hold of its COVID cases. However, in the last few weeks, that curve is bent back towards the original curve and is likely to cross it in the next couple of weeks. So that is not good news. Here are the states that have over 100,000 cases. And there are 4 of them that have exponential rises going on at the moment: Arizona, Florida, Texas, and California. And take a look at the states that have over 50,000 cases, and there are 5 of those 9 that also have exponential rises, which means they may well be joining the 100,000 case club by next week or the week after. Those are Tennessee, Ohio, Louisiana, North Carolina, and Georgia. Some disappointing news: after having 3 weeks of relatively constant death rates at around about 300 to 800 per day, we had a jump in the death rates yesterday, and we have to go back 5 weeks before we find a death rate that was higher than that. And so I think what is happening now is the increase in the number of cases is now beginning to be reflected 2 or 3 weeks later in the number of deaths. And so I expect this death rate number to continue to go up for the next few weeks until we have this latest outbreak under control. Let's get some of the key quotes of the week. President Trump claimed that 99% of COVID cases are totally harmless. That is hard to square with a 5% death rate. But also, doctors are now indicating that some organs may be impacted. That could include the heart, kidneys, pancreas, the gastrointestinal tract, liver, and brain. No biggie for any of those. According to the White House, Americans will have to learn to live with the fact that the virus being a threat. Now, that is a callous statement, I think, and also when you consider that effectively since March we've had the equivalent of 2 9/11 attacks every week to create the death rate of 130,000 in that time. And remember the amount of effort and money that went into countering that terrorist threat. We seem to have a very lackluster response to something that is actually much, much bigger. A statement in The Lancet, one of the world's leading medical journals. In the light of these findings, any proposed approach to achieve herd immunity through natural infections is not only highly unethical, but also unachievable. And from the World Health Organization, there is emerging evidence of airborne spread of the novel coronavirus. This, if true, is a very, very serious issue. The European Union has instituted a travel ban for most countries. Only the ones here marked in light blue can actually be allowed to enter the European Union borders. The countries included in the ban are the United States, Brazil, Peru, Chile, Russia, India, South Africa, i.e. all the places where the worst outbreaks seem to be occurring at the moment. So what can we conclude from all of this? 1, that many places opened up too soon and too liberally, which is resulting in a new surge that has surpassed earlier pandemics in some places. Some countries have reduced their new case numbers by adhering to mask wearing and social distancing guidelines very strictly. The learn to live with it motto that seems to be being adopted by the current administration really translates, in my opinion, to learn to die with it so some of our buddies can make a bit more money. I think that's a very callous attitude to be having when you're supposed to be protecting the public health. One Trump supporter went so far as to say that think of all the money we're saving on Social Security because of all these old people dying off. I think that and trying to get Trump re-elected are the real two drivers over the ridiculous policies that the US has been adopting for the last few months. The only way to stop this virus is to stop this virus. And that will lead to a much sooner and more comprehensive opening of the economy than the current methods that are being proposed and instituted.
So until next time, stay safe and goodbye.